Oh, that's not right. I can't spell.
Condescension.
That's the truth. Yeah, condescension. Condescending.
Condi.
Right. There's an S and a C in there somewhere. The reason why we do that is because if we can belittle somebody else, it distances ourselves from having to listen to them. So what a lot of people do with me is they hear this divine truth, like, external, like about the spheres and everything. They go, oh yeah, this sounds all wonderful. It's amazing. I really like going there because it's really nice to listen to, and it's encouraging to my soul to listen to the fact that I live an eternal life, and that there's more going on than what just this life and all these things, and it's relieving actually to hear universal truth to your soul. Your soul feels relieved. But when it comes to our personal error and somebody starting to point it out, our soul does not feel relieved. Our soul feels like fight for the error, fight. We are in a state where we want to go to war. Then, now there's all sorts of ways we manage that. So the average person doesn't sort of realise that in themselves that they want to go to war and it's that bad. So they go, condescension, or they go comparison, or they go doubt, or they go excusing, or they go just stay in denial or illusion, or just blame my mum and dad for it all. The fact that I'm unloving now is all their fault. Or no, don't blame mum and dad because I still want a relationship. Blame God instead. That'd be a good idea. We do all sorts of things, including, of course, blame Jesus, right? Which is very high on most people's lists. When you come to a seminar and he's saying something to you that you don't want to hear, of course, most of the time you're going to blame the person who's brave enough to say it, aren't you? So that's normal. And what I'm saying is, it's normal to have these responses and actions, but you've got to understand, it's the error fighting for itself inside you. The sin is inside you. It's fighting to stay there. And it's going to be tricky, malicious, devious. It's going to be blaming and critical. It's going to do everything it possibly can to stay there. And then what you do with that is going to determine how good a relationship you ever have with God in your future. Right? That what you do when this confrontation begins is going to determine your future. Now, almost everyone I've ever met has lost the battle with error. When I say lost the battle, what I mean is they stay in their error. They don't allow the truth to influence their error. Almost everybody I know. And this is why, you come to one seminar and there's 200 people there. Well, we've had seminars like this. One seminar in the UK, 200 people came. The next day, 7. Okay. Right? Now, I was nice to them. I wasn't unkind. But what they were hearing was this starting to happen. We were talking about sexual matters. We were talking about relationship between men and women, and how many people don't realise, but it's very, very damaged on earth, the relationship between men and women. And when we started focusing in on the fact that it was happening for many of the people in the group, many of them were very offended. And so did not come ever again, never seen them again. Right? In Australia, we had an auditorium there gifted to us for a period of about 18 months. And in that time there, we had almost 300 people come every weekend for 18 months. Right? Almost every single one of those people are not listening to divine truth now. Almost every single one. Why is that? Because sooner or later, this is going to happen to you. It's going to happen to you. And you think it's not going to, but it is. And what's going to happen to you is there's going to become a confrontation, internal emotional confrontation between the truth that's being shared and the error that exists within. You understand? And that confrontation is going to get so great that you're going to use this and another 500 other methods, right, to reason yourself out of listening to the truth. And what's going to happen, unless you start embracing the truth, you're not going to love it anymore. You're going to hate it. That's what's going to happen, right? So many of you, you know, we knew it's like 10 or 15 years ago, and then we don't see you for 10 years. That happens too, where somebody doesn't listen to for 10 years and then they go, what am I doing? I don't even understand why I stopped listening. You know, there's many people like that are starting to listen again, who come back to us and say, look, I know we've been away for 10 years or whatever. I don't even understand why I went away. And when we start discussing this, they almost feel like going away straight away again. Right? Because there's a way, there's all these methods we use, even things like time.
Yeah.
Just don't spend any time thinking about it. If you don't spend any time thinking about it, it's not going to bother you. You know, just things like that can cause these shifts to occur. Yeah? Where are we up to? Let's go right up the back on that side and then across. I want you to grasp. And that is, you will feel a lot of joy about listening to God's truth as long as it remains external to you. You will. What I love about the truth is it's so attractive to listen to. Like, atheists, frequently come to our seminars. They love listening. And I'm talking about God. Now, the average atheist, whenever they hear the word God, they're pretty upset. Right? They feel quite offended about that, the average atheist. But many atheists who come along, they start listening because they didn't realise, for the most part, how logical the truth could actually be. Right? And it's the same with all sorts of religious faiths and all sorts of people from different walks of life. Every single person I ever met, generally, is fascinated about truth as long as it remains external to them. But the same applies to every single person when it starts being personal. Personally, when we start seeing the error within, or it starts getting exposed, I have yet to meet a person who hasn't fought. In my entire time on earth, and my entire time in the spirit world, I have yet to meet a person who hasn't initially fought the truth, their personal truth. There's been no one that's initially not fought it. Well, in this life I've fought it. In the first century, not so much, right? But in this life I certainly have. So even me, I've fought it. You understand? I understand this, particularly from this life. I understand this now more than I ever understood it in the first century. In the first century I used to know, that person's fighting again, I'll just have to leave them alone for a while, I'll go on to this person, and that person's fighting again, that entire, they all want to throw me off a cliff. So, okay, why do you think people wanted to throw me off a cliff? If the truth is so attractive, why did they want to throw me off a cliff? Why did they want to crucify me? It's because when it gets personal, that's what people feel like doing. Yeah? The Pharisees, who really, to a large degree, were a part of my death, every time they couldn't avoid the conversation. It's sort of like, you would think that if somebody is talking about the opposite of what you want them to talk about, the best course of action would be just to not be there. But no, they had to be there. And they had to make their points, and every time where they made their points, the logic of the truth always exposed the error in them. And that all happened publicly. It didn't have to happen publicly, but they wanted it to happen publicly, and so I had no choice. It was public. Every time there was sometimes there was 2,000 or 3,000 people listening to me criticise the Pharisees. They were pretty annoyed because the fight for error was pretty strong. Now, some of these guys now are my friends, right? But they weren't then. They did everything in their power to undermine things. First, they thought, they could just reason with me. But gee, I'm so unreasonable, right? And when I say that, I mean I'm unable to be reasoned with. If I believe, if I know God's truth on a matter, I am not going to shy away from that, and I'm not going to be shifted. That's the way it is. And by the way, when you know God's truth about a matter and you actually know it, you'll feel exactly the same, right? Anything harmonious with love, you will feel, I'm not shifting. And so they learnt. He's not shifting. So what do we do now? He's not shifting. And every time we get in a public argument with him, which they wanted, by the way, because they wanted to be condescending with me. They wanted to, show people that I was wrong. Right? That was their motivation, right? So they got in these arguments and this condescension with me and belittling me and all sorts of things like that. And every time it didn't work out well for them, right? So now what do? Well, it's a very similar experience to what I had when I told you about yesterday when I was 5 to 7. What does the guy who's potentially violent do when he can't manipulate a person who's not going to move? They're going to get violent, right? Right? And so in this fighting for error, the extreme of it is murder. I've experienced it. The extreme of a person fighting for error is murder. I've seen people fight for error and rape. These are extremes of the fight for error. I've seen people in error do that. They've gone so strongly into their error that they've gone to these terrible darkness in order to fight for it, right? And in my case, they reverted to murder, right? In Mary's case, the same. First century life, she was murdered as well. Almost all of my friends in the first century were murdered. Almost all of them. That's why they put the Christians in the arenas, because they didn't want to hear any truth, right? It was the personal truth. It was just the universal truth everybody's happy to listen to because it doesn't affect them. They can sort of act like their life can just go on like it was going to go on, and they can get away with just, oh, isn't that wonderful? Oh, that's a good thought. Oh, isn't it great? They can get away with that kind of reasoning. But when you start getting personal with people, now, if you don't let them do all of these things, they get progressively more and more and more and more angry to the extent where they'll even revert to murder. Suicide is another way most people do as well. A lot of people will revert to suicide as well. Murder of self. Rather than face the emotions, rather than face the truth of what's going on. Yeah? So up the back. So in answer to your question, tomorrow we want to answer personal questions, but I also always want to bring it back to the era we're in. That will be my theme tomorrow. Make sense? Yep.
I think maybe it's personal or it's with error, because my question is, yesterday I felt a lot of numbness, but mixed with feelings, or like, I can't describe what it was, because it's like new for me, and I want to open about it.
Numb is another method we use.
Yeah.
Just go numb. Just go. If you see a child, if you try, it's interesting when a child is in a state where they're demanding. If you discipline the child by holding it and restricting it from doing what it wants, it'll go through stages, right? Usually the first stage is rage, so it kicks and screams and tries to, get out of the hold, and if you keep holding, eventually the child will go in a state where it's pointless being in a rage, so I'm just going to go listless, numb. And the child will just sort of let all of his muscles go and just hang there. And it's not over yet. The fight isn't over yet. That's a technique you learnt in your childhood to get away from dealing with something. It's a method here. Numb is another method we use to just go tune out, zone out, get away from the issue. And so they go numb. You keep holding them. You'll hold them for long enough, they'll go back to anger. Because they want numb to work. Most people want no action to work. It's sort of like, the truth is confronting my error. God's expecting me to take an action to fix that. No action means that I don't have to do anything, so I just take no action. But the problem with that is in your life, you finish up taking no action, taking no action, taking no action. 100 years pass, you die, taking no action for a while there too. And you end up in states where nothing's really changed for a couple of 100 years in your life if you're not careful, before you start to actually learn to take action and stop being numb to everything. Numb is a desire to avoid emotional truth, a desire to avoid your emotions, to avoid your feelings.
It was so difficult because there was some feelings that I can't describe, but it was not bad and not good. It was like a weird stage of, I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of us, when we get into these states of change, we don't realise, wow, I'm just freaked out about any change that happens to me. And for many of us, we then back off of change by just going numb, taking no action, avoiding change, excusing, and all of these other things we do. We do these things because we feel going forward is uncertain, is what we believe. We feel it's not necessary. We don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. And because it's uncertain, we then go, well, do I really want it? Isn't it better just to stay like I am? Because that's certain. Now, there's many times in your future, and this is probably, I'll say just before lunch, because we need to stop for some lunch. There's many times in your future where your future will be uncertain, and you'll be very tempted to stay in the state where you are presently. There's people in the second sphere of the spirit world. The second sphere is like paradise compared to Austria, Austria is like a dirty hovel compared to the second sphere. That's how beautiful it is. Right? Here it seems very beautiful when you look on the outside, but there's a lot of things wrong with it, of course. But even with all the beauty that's here, the second sphere is like heaps, 10 times better than anything you can imagine here. And so when people get there for the very first time, they go, why would I want to go anywhere else? I like this place. People are nice. There's no nastiness. There's no, everybody seems to like talking about lots of interesting things. Life's really interesting. Why would I want to go to the third sphere? The third sphere is uncertain. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what changes I'm going to have to make there. I'm very comfortable here. So I've known people who stayed in the second sphere of the spirit world for 200 years, right? Because it was comfortable compared to their life before then. It was better. But not as happy as they could be. It's much happier in the third and fourth and fifth spheres. Each new sphere is like huge difference in happiness. The celestial kingdom is like unimaginable for most of you in terms of happiness. And yet, the average person is arriving in the second and going, well, they even know there's more, but they're not feeling like it's for them because of the uncertainty. And so they take no action. And so they stay there. And they stay there for a long time, oftentimes. Oftentimes until all their friends are gone and all their family's gone and all their, people they knew and met in the second sphere, they're all progress too. And it's like, there's a whole new generation of people now in the second sphere and they get to know them. And then after a while they go as well. And after a while you feel like, I'm getting left behind. And then you start looking at why you're in that state, which is a lot of times about being numb, wanting to not move forward because you're afraid of what might be forward. Right? And so I'm recommending to you to not do these things. But after our break, where we'll have probably half an hour for lunch, I want to focus more attention on this, because I feel it's the main problem we have when we're sharing truth with others. When we get down to the nitty-gritties of your personal life, that's when most of you are going to get angry. Right? You're going to get upset with Jesus, for sure. I don't know anybody who hasn't been, in my entire life, upset with me.
And, you know, not just you,
With God?
God, you know, a lot of us are harbouring a lot of feelings. You know, we receive
Resentments.
some truth,
Yeah.
and then we feel like, oh, God.
But it's a lot
it's not
easier
reasonable.
to project it at a person who shares God's truth than it is to project it at God, because for the majority of us, we feel like God doesn't listen to us anyway. So let's get angry with the person who's sharing the truth, the messenger, rather than where the message is from, is generally what we feel. That's why they call that statement, you know, shoot the messenger. Well, in my case, it was like hang the messenger, you know, crucify the messenger. Now, many of you don't realise it, but you're going to even do that in the future. You're going to have that desire to get rid of me out of your life. And I'm going, well, for some of you, I'm in your life very temporarily. Some of you have the option of us being in your life permanently, because you'll want God's love permanently. I would love for all of you to be in the second category. But it's going to require you facing this problem that is going to be in everyone who has sin, which means it's in everyone. Right, this problem.
And it's not the sort of thing, even though here's the theory of it, and we can sort of grasp it, but it's not the sort of thing that you can then reach that point and then go, oh no, this is just that thing that Jesus explained that day.
I just calm myself down and
I'll
be
just
right.
listen to the truth.
It's not gonna be like that.
It's going to be an emotional process that you have to go through.
Yep.
And sometimes more than once, you know, it's not like
On a lot of different subjects.
yeah.
It's going to be.
Sometimes you think, no, I'm actually really humble now. And then you hit another thing and you're like, whoa, no, I'm going to fight for this one. Yeah.
And now there's probably on earth about 5 people who trust me at the moment, who trust that anything I say to them is worth listening to with regard to their personal life.
And you know what I've noticed? People start to have the same reaction to them as to Jesus. Because these people really honour truth. They don't accept error as much.
Yep.
And so they present truth to you, and then often I see people have the same reaction that they've had to Jesus to those people.
Yeah. And
Like
that's normal.
With Eloisa, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
With myself, with
Yeah.
other people. Yeah.
Yeah. What I would like to see is that you, at least by the time we finish our conversation with you this weekend, at least you start to understand what this feels like.
Yeah.
This internal fight, battle that you're actually having, not just with truth, but also with God. That you at least understand how it feels internally, right, to be in that state. Because if you can feel the state, you can recognise it, and you can work your way through it. But if you live in the state, rather than feeling your way through the state, you're going to end up rejecting truth. You're going to be one of the many tens of thousands, millions of people that have heard it and then delay the implementation of it. Right? Because of personal, emotional reasons that you're fighting for. Right? And now I would like for you not to be like that. But there's no control I have over that. You are individuals, you have free will, you can do what you like. You can shoot the messenger, you can criticise the messenger, you can be condescending to him, you can excuse yourself, you can do all of those things. God lets you do it all. You're allowed to do it. I'm going to let you do it all. I'm not going to enjoy your company, though, while you do it. That's how it is. I enjoy the company of people who are, like myself, focused on truth, no matter what change I have to make. No matter what I got to see about myself, I'm going to do that. That makes sense? And you, once you start to feel feelings for God and have feel God's feelings for you, you're going to eventually end up being very similar to me. Like, I've got millions of celestial friends, and every one of them is just as bad as I am about this truth thing. Or you could say just as good as I am about this truth thing, depending on your perspective. Right? This is why on earth very few people hear a celestial spirit speak. Because the error is fighting for itself. Now, your spirit guides, your spirit friends, they would love to have you change on this issue. Because if you change on the issue, you're going to be much more open to hearing truth, to progressing, to making changes while you're here on earth. And the immense benefits of that you will experience if you do that. But it's going to be tough initially because sin wants itself to survive. And that's going to be the battle. And in fact, if you've ever read the Paget messages, there's a message in there that says the real battle, we were talking about war, like the First World War, the Second, we were talking about it at the time in context. But I said to Ned, the real battle is not the war. The real battle is the individual's own fight with his own sin. This is going to be the thing you find the hardest in your life. It's going to be harder than anything else you do. Harder than anything else you try to achieve in your life will be your own battle with your own sin. Right? And it's a fight that is worth winning. It's a fight you can win. You see, the world's religions, and particularly the Christian faith, will tell you you're a condemned sinner, you will never win. And I'm saying to you, that's not true. You can win the battle with your sin. But it's going to be a battle. It's not going to be a walk in the park. And most people who hear, spiritual speakers speak, they want to hear, it's going to be easy. There's this mystical easy road. It's just going to be a breeze. And, if we do this and we do that, you're just going to breeze through life and everything's going to be fine. And they're full of crap. It's not true. The battle with your sin is a difficult battle. It can be won, but it's going to require sincerity on your part. It's going to require a sincere desire and effort on your part to do it. And most of you at this stage don't even know what your sins are yet. You've got to identify every one of them in order to win the battle. God's love coming to your soul is going to help you do all of that. It's going to expose the sin within you. Every little bit of love that comes is just going to make you more aware of the sin that exists or is present. That's what it does. It's like shining a light on the darkness within. Right? And you've got to let yourself go through that process, and not even let yourself, but eventually love it. Love the process. And that once you come to love the process, things will change immensely for you. Yeah? Now, I won't answer any more questions now because we need to have a break, don't we? So let's do the break and then we'll continue.